Hello, this is Lisa Russick with the podcast We Are All Psychic. Hey, listen to those chipmunks out there. I don't know if you can hear them when I finish, but there's some chipmunks talking about it outside the window. And yes, I still think we're all psychic. My cats, Einstein and Gandalf, are enjoying the window as usual every morning they do. And every day is a new day, and it just happens to be a sunny day today. So, if I were let's say if I were picking a tarot card for a sunny day today, I could pick the sun. But I think I'd pick the Wheel of Fortune. Because you never know, the weathermen are always wrong. They just kind of guess. They really should hire psychics to do the weather reports, I think. They might do better. And maybe some witches, because they can change the weather. And so can psychics and energy workers and everybody. But it's not very nice to do to the Earth. She's kind of, well, if you really don't want me to reign here, I won't. This is not what this podcast is about. I've got some news. And I do want to talk about the Wheel of Fortune. I want to talk about the changes in life and the perspectives we have that go with them. And when I say the Wheel of Fortune, if you don't know of the Wheel of Fortune in the tarot, it is basically the reason there is a tarot, other than the card of the magician. Studying the tarot will teach you that the Wheel of Fortune is about how we have cycles in our lives, and that's what the tarot represents. The cycles of the physical, the mental, the spiritual, and the emotional. And then the major arcana, those are the suits. And the major arcana has the Wheel of Fortune, which is the 10th card. It's the 11th card, interestingly enough, but is numbered 10, because the Fool is 0. That's the first card. Oh, it's so confusing with all the metaphysical things. And it's actually not when you start digging in. So we'll dig in a little bit with the Wheel of Fortune and put it into some practical work here in life. If you've been listening to the podcast, I made an announcement that we were going to work with a network station, a streaming station called Ethereal TV. But we decided not to. Misty and I just want to do our own thing, I think. So she and I have podcasts for you, which I will mix and produce and do all the things I do for podcast and try to do my best. And sometimes, the wheel is down and I'm not perceiving things very well, or my ears are going, is that a chipmunk or a squirrel? What's that noise? And I'll focus on that spot and I'll focus on the audio until it sounds like utter crap. But for some reason, it sounds better to me and I have no idea why. That's a Wheel of Fortune reversed. That's when the wheel's spinning the other way. Okay, let's talk about the wheel. The Wheel of Fortune is about your destiny and where life takes you and the things you have no control over, usually. But do you? That's the question of the mystery of the High Priestess, I think. In my life, things definitely have always been on a wheel. And as representative of the Wheel of Fortune, some people like to use in their decks or in explaining the Wheel of Fortune, a Ferris wheel. It goes up and down, spins around, and it stops sometimes. And you don't know where it's going to stop. And you don't know when it's going to go again. And you don't know where you're going to be. And it's kind of scary. The first time I was on a Ferris wheel, I screamed the whole time. I was terrified. I don't like heights. So I very rarely got on Ferris wheels, and the only other time I think I remember getting, maybe when I was older on dates or something, I might get on a Ferris wheel and pretend I wasn't scared, but I was. The only other one I was on that I definitely screamed with, my little girlfriend, Meg. We were on a double. She talked me into a double Ferris wheel. And, oh my gosh, that was the scariest thing I've ever done. It was at a fair, a local fair in the city of Decatur when I was a little girl with my little girl, Meg. And, so I always was afraid of the swinging, which is kind of ironic because in my life, I've had a lot of the swinging in the way things play out, in the way I feel about things, and with my health, and with my energy, and with my emos. So most of the time, we've talked about this on the podcast, I don't have too many strong emotions of my own until I got older and could separate my feelings from other people's feelings. And with relating to the Wheel of Fortune, before then, I was always just riding the wheel. I didn't know what was gonna happen. I mean, I do believe we can put some kind of a well, I think we can change our perspective about where we are on the wheel and what the wheel represents, and I think that's the best way to live the wheel. But the perspective for me onto the wheel as being not scary, not this terrified of heights. Maybe I'm gonna embrace my fear of heights and try to learn not to be scared, etc. That's what I mean as a metaphor for embracing the cycles of life that the Wheel of Fortune in the tarot represents. I do believe this is how life plays out as a metaphor for all of us. The Wheel of Fortune in the tarot itself. The tarot tells the story of everything we all go through throughout our lives. And an example of that would be, Misty and me having our fight, and then making up. That's the wheel reversed, and the wheel spins, and we're friends again. And we're gonna continue to do the podcast again together, mostly when she can. She doesn't have a lot of opportunities to do it anymore, but I'm gonna continue to just hustle on through them. You know I love this podcast, listeners and watchers. And I'm not doing a video podcast right now, so I don't know why I said watchers. It just kind of comes out sometimes. I thought that I would never speak to Misty again. That's an interesting thing about being in the moment and not thinking of cycles and all. Of course, we have to live in the moment. Was definitely recommended in the metaphysical field. But if we're consciously living in the moment and being aware of so many things at once, and this is not something I got to very quickly. I had to work on it, and I'm still not all the way, definitely, you know, thinking about everything I'm saying before I say it. You guys know that better than anyone. But I'm learning to discern, like, in the moment, enjoy it or experience it. What I used to do was I'd process it later, a lot later, and sometimes it could be years later, even 10, 20, 30, 40 years later. But now I'm trying to process in the moment. I'm trying to keep my temper under control when I'm feeling outraged, and the reason I have this underlying outrage, I feel, is because the wheel was down a lot for a long time, and I blamed everybody else for that, and it's nobody's fault. It's just the wheel. And I did have a lot of anger I never expressed all my life. And, if you listen to the podcast with Lori, she said that I need to look at my anger a different way, maybe, that it serves me. And I did have, since that podcast, I've really worked with that. And I've been doing better since that podcast with my anger. I do have diverticulitis still, and that's always a great time to do an audio podcast. And that's, one of those bad times in life, the wheel whoops, spun around the other way. And I really wish the wheel would move and spin really quickly the right way. Or just start spinning. So in numerology, the number 10, the Wheel of Fortune's card's number. Number 10 is, and in tarot, is considered a completion and a beginning. And it's also the number 1. It breaks down to 1. It's also about the self with God, the number 10. Because 0 is like the God force number in numerology. That's how I think of it. And 1 is the self, the identity, the drive, the leader. 8's the leader too, but they do different things. But the number 10 is you and God together. You could say you and God forced together. So the wheel is really, we do have a say in our wheel. I think that's what that interpretation of the tarot card, the Wheel of Fortune, being number 10 means. Perhaps we were constantly working with the divine, or a creator, or a deity to create our lives. That's suggested by the High Priestess in the tarot, as well as the Tower, I think. So with the Wheel of Fortune being number 10, and the Priestess being number 2, and the Magician being number 1 in the tarot, and the Wheel of Fortune being the 11th card. So let's break this down a little bit. With it being the 11th card, in numerology, 11 is a master teacher number, and it goes 11, 2, 11/2. I've talked about this in my numerology podcasts. And 11/2 is the master teacher, but it breaks down to 2, the priestess. So if you look at the wheel, 10 breaks down to 1, the magician, 1. So they all work together because of the wheel being the 11th card. 11 is a very strong number, and it's a very hard number, difficult number. And then why we call it difficult? Because we don't like it, suffering. But suffering teaches us if we choose it to. And not getting the perfect life teaches us if we decide it will. What will it teach us? How to get the life we want, how to keep the wheel the way we want. But we can work with that God force, that 0 number. That 0 is the unpredictable. How are we going to perceive that 0 is the important part. And I do believe that is where the magician comes in, and the 0 of the fool in the 10. The fool has an open mind. The fool has an open mind. The magician has an intention with an open mind. So, work with the 0, work with the magician, work with the 1, work with your belief of your whatever you believe in. I really think it's all kind of the same for all of us, whatever it is we might believe or not believe in deep down. So say an atheist says they don't believe in anything, that's still believing in something, I think. But I believe everybody I've known has a feeling deep down that they're from somewhere, they are something, they're connected to something, and they don't maybe it's evil, or they think. But whatever this thing is inside of us, it loves us, and we know it loves us, and it is out there. And there's times in our lives, where we just feel it, and we know we are loved by what? Some of us don't know, but we get these moments of peace. Maybe it's an ancestor or guide, or maybe it's our divine, our source, people call it, or whatever it is that takes care of us, guardian angel. But the 0 in numerology really is about the power in all of us that is given to us, or that we just innately have. I love how all the tools in metaphysics go together, in psychic teachings, in witchcraft. All the tools work together, and they all, like, when I first started into the metaphysical, actually expanding out of psychic mindset and mediumship mindset and looking into magic and stuff like that. I was like, well, where do witches get their power? And surprisingly, not many people could answer me. My ex-husband answered me. He said it was, I think I did a podcast about it maybe, but he said it was earth magic. And you know what I found is working with magic, it's everything. Magic is in everything. Every single thing. It's just like believing that every single thing has a soul or a personality or a life within, and I do feel that way. That every single thing has a personality, very important place. And that's you too, listener. If you're one of those people who are wondering why you are here, I recommend getting a tarot deck and really diving deep into the tarot about the themes. Just learn what the themes are and see how they might play in your life and what your perspective of these themes are. Then maybe journal it or record it, your thoughts on these. Go through, like, say, I wouldn't get a little book with keywords. I would go somewhere that really describes the themes of the cards. That I've recommended the Royal Road blog several times, Sacred Scribes, Royal Road. I think I'll put a link to it in the description to all the tarot cards in that blog. It's a great place to start an exploration of your perspective on what all this is about, the metaphysics, the ideas behind the spirituality, the ideas behind this stuff. And you can take this exploration yourself. You don't have to do it with anyone. So you can go through the cards, see where these, like, say the Five of Pentacles, for example. Five of Pentacles is a card about financial hardship. It's about being sick. It's about trying to ask for help. It's about supportive friends. Those are keywords, but they're themes in our lives. And it's about what I'm asking for you guys to try is to, if you've never done this or if you do not study the tarot or just popped in on this podcast and you're looking for something to do, click on the link that I have for the Royal Road and then go through the cards and read about them. Read the descriptions. You don't have to read the reversals. You can. I recommend it. And write down a little thing in your life or times in your life when you went through that cycle. And then your perspective of it then and now. And what you would like your perspective to be. And then I would suggest going through the minor arcana first, because the major arcana are the themes. And then after that, you can go through with the major arcana and see where these are themes. These other cards in the minor arcana. And then you can go back to the wheel and just think about what your perspective is on the Wheel of Fortune and your life. And that very name, Wheel of Fortune. I think that tarot is a beautiful philosophy, and that philosophy carries over into all our metaphysical tools, all of our psychic tools, all of our energy working tools. Just starting out with this stuff. Or being curious. Be curious. But it's more of like a thesis, let's say. Or a study. It's really a study, and it's a beautiful study, and you can learn so much about yourself and a lot about philosophy, which is a beautiful thing. Philosophy, it's as my boyfriend says, Eric, he says it's the quest to better yourself all the time, and it is, and that's what metaphysics is too. We try. And the best part for me is it's worked for me. I feel happier. And I feel clearer-headed. Not all the time. But I feel like I have more control over my life. Like I should. And I love life now, even though sometimes I want to jump through a window 2 flights up. I won't, though. Because the wheel always spins, and I do have some say in how that wheel spins, I believe, because of that 0, and because of that 11th card, and because the High Priestess is that 2nd card, and because the Magician is that 1st card. Now, if you do your exploration of that, like I suggested in this podcast, re-listen to that last part I just said and see if that makes sense. Thank you so much for listening, as always, listeners, and I want to thank my sponsor, Everclear. Everclear is an advice app where you can get advice from psychics and empaths to get the clarity you need to create the life you deserve. I am an advisor on Everclear under the name Leesa P, Leesa P. You can get to a link to my profile on Everclear through the website, www.weirdpsychic.com. Oh my gosh, you know what? I just wish there was some way I could meet everybody who listens to this podcast. It'd be really cool to figure that out, a We're All Psychic party. I have an Oculus, and I've been wanting to do an Oculus podcast for a long time. But I'm afraid to get on my Oculus and play too much because I will not come back out, I don't think. It's just a struggle. It's a struggle. I have had it, the Oculus, for a long time. Well, 2020, when COVID happened, I got an Oculus. And if you don't know what an Oculus is, it's a VR virtual reality. And I loved it. I loved it. But it was taking my life. Because I love technology, I love games, and they will take my life. And they'll live there, and I'll have a happy life, but this life will be gone. The podcast will be gone, my work will be gone, my family will be gone, everybody, just the game exists. I'll tell a story about that sometime if I haven't before. Lastly, I love you guys, always, always. Thank you so much for always listening, everybody, and we got lots of content coming your way very soon. Peace out. Bye.